The car wasn't hard to find. The place was upscale enough to have its own parking, but not a ton of it, and only off to the side of the building and out on the street. The sedan was on the street, parked about a quarter block down from the entrance to Firestorm. Too close to the enormous line of people waiting to get in for me to just walk right up. And, I really can't call it a bar. That would be disingenuous. It's definitely one of those nightclubs that pretends to be a bar, but everybody really knows it's 40% coke and hookers. There wasn't a lot I needed to do. But among those things that I needed to do, the first part was the most difficult due to the crowd. You can't trust people with money to do what you want, so I couldn't pay anybody to put the tracker on the car. I needed a distraction. A simple one that would gather a lot of people close at hand. I had called to acquaintances on the way for just such a distraction, figuring that at an upscale club like Firestorm I wouldn't be able to pay anybody enough to do what I wanted. The acquaintances met me in an alleyway across from the entrance. "This is gonna square our debt, Frank," the one who could speak murmured. The other one wasn't gagged or anything. She just couldn't speak because her throat had been slit. Or close enough. She'd survived, but it had taken her voice from her. The woman speaking had hired me quite a while ago to find her husband cheating on her. She'd had suspicions that he was fucking other women when, she found another woman's lipstick on her husband, and it wasn't on his lips. Don't think she really needed to hire me, but I guess she wanted to be sure. So I'd found her evidence, and then I'd done some overtime, and found out he was planning to kill her to get out of divorcing the stone-cold cast-iron bitch and giving her half of his money and holdings. Big mess, that's what that was. Big mess. So, she was in fashion, the woman, and also she worked in fashion. Hey, jokes. The mute was her assistant. Those days, I was fairly sure that they slept together, or at least the mute watched. She seemed like a woman who'd like to watch. Nice enough girl, though, for not being real chatty. I found myself not answering Ellie, the fashion designer. I was staring at the mute, who was staring back at me in shock. Her eyes were not what I remembered. No, they were flecked with neon green, so pure and clear against black iris that it was shocking. After a moment, she creepily smiled a little and touched Ellie's arm. I glanced back to Ellie and saw the fashion designer blink, eyes shifting as if some concealment were falling away. Unlike the mute's, her eyes were black at the outside of the irises, but they faded into a dull, blood-shiny red around the pupils. "Not human. You're not human," I said quietly. Ellie chuckled. "Well, I'll be someone else who knows the truth. I didn't know you were in on the secret, Frankie. How'd you get out from under the veil moratorium? Is that its full name? It's a moratorium? What is it supposed to prohibit?" She blinked. The mute's smile widened. And I saw her teeth. God, her teeth. Sharp fangs from gum to polished tips. All of them. At least all the ones in the front. Oh my God, Frank, you just found out. I thought you were already in the know back when... This explains a lot. I thought you knew about magic because you took favors as payment for your extra work instead of me. Well, Listen, I have enough problems with my court. Okay, and my people have protocols for this. Don't get involved with newbies. I can't answer your questions. It's It's nothing personal. Frank, I have to protect myself and my own, she answered a moment later, looking uncomfortable. You're a good man, Frank. It's complicated. No, you know what? It's fine. More people than I care to remember have told me it's complicated, and I've survived thus far. Besides, I can't focus on that right now. I don't care right now. I have other things to worry about, I muttered, shaking my head and putting my game face on. You can walk right into Firestorm, right, Ellie? No line. Yeah, Frank. Of course I can. Do you know who I am? Yeah, whatever. You're a big name. Don't care. Can you get in line instead? Start a cat fight with someone. You know, a chick fight. Distract people. Like you said, this'll square us, and you won't owe me anything after. She looked to the mute, and the mute nodded after looking thoughtful for a moment. Ellie smiled at me, flashing those same fangy teeth. I shuddered. They weren't teeth meant for meat. Or anything else. They were meant for puncturing and gripping. For drawing blood from thick, deep veins. Starting a catfight would be fun, actually, Frank. I could use the press, you know. I mean, any press is good press. Yes. Yes, I can do that, she mused, glancing to the line. For a moment, I wasn't sure what she was planning, and then she simply walked off. The mute winked at me and followed, and I shuddered again. But, some part of me was feeling entirely different feelings somewhere below my belt. I looked down at my groin. No, penis. Trust me when I say you do not want to be interested in that, I muttered. My libido disagreed. I made a mental note not to act on those urges without some kind of protective silver groin cup or something. Like a Kevlar condom. I stood in the mouth of the alley, watching and waiting in pure silence. The women made their way down past the end of the line on my side of the street, and then crossed over and headed towards the club. In their immaculate, gorgeous outfits, they looked every inch like they belonged there. 2 women out on the town. One wearing a thick leather posture collar to hide her terrible scars, and the other wearing a simple choker for what I assumed was, fashion reasons. I guess. I readied myself for the action. What happened was, sorta what was expected and sorta not. They joined the line, simply cutting in front of 2 particularly impatient-looking women, dressed in clothing that really wasn't as nice as Ellie's and her mutes. The women immediately got angry, of course. Ellie and the mute turned around and simply stared. No one else seemed to notice, as both Ellie and the mute leaned inward slowly, and the angry bitches simply slowly trailed off into stunned silence. I felt something in my head, a sort of sudden pressure, from all the way across the street, like a psychic impulse. They were hypnotizing those 2 women. Some weird vampire magic. Spells and shit. Very suddenly, after a few moments of silent, awkward staring, Ellie and the mute turned around and stood in line as if they'd always been there. For a full 2.5 minutes, everything was quiet. And then one of the women behind them shoved Ellie so hard she nearly fell over. Ellie whipped out and cried, "What the hell?" With such genuine indignance, I thought maybe she wasn't faking, even though I just watched her put the sexy psychic whammy on the poor lady. Maybe I didn't feel so good about her fucking about with somebody else's mind. Maybe I thought it was awful that she did that, but I kept my focus. Breathe in, teenage girl who needs you. Breathe out. The ends justify the means, Frank. Breathe in. You can't fail. Breathe out. The universe is giving you a chance to redeem yourself for your failure. If you're going to wind up an old man, you might as well at least be able to live with yourself. So Ellie and the club ladies exchanged some harsh words, and I heard Ellie say again, "Do you even know who I am?" And then, within a few more exchanges of heated words, the fur was flying. You know what I mean? It was a catfight, and they were giving it their all. I mean, they were really, really going at it. And the line turned its entire focus on them. I gave 30 seconds for the women to get fast and hard and hair-pulling and screaming and, that sort of thing. And then I strode calmly across the street, knelt by the sedan's rear wheel, and tugged a damp cloth from its plastic baggie in my pocket. I actually reached under the bumper and cleaned off the metal on the inside in just a tiny spot before carefully working the tiny tracker up into place as far from the edge as possible. The tracker was black, smooth, subtle, about as thick as a U.S. quarter and about the same diameter. Easy to miss if somebody did a bomb check. My backup plan was to attempt to shadow them the standard way, but if I could use the tracker, they might not know I was coming. I checked my phone. 10:56. 1 hour, 4 minutes to midnight. 1 hour and 4 minutes to save Melissa. No one even noticed me as I slipped back across the street and backed up into the darkness of the alley. From there, I drew the binocs from my bag and waited in blackness. My timing wasn't bad, but I was definitely cutting it very close. Less than 5 minutes later, security for the club had the 4 women sitting with their backs to the building. Ellie looked incredibly amused and vaguely horny, and the mute looked satisfied with her performance and vaguely horny, and it occurred to me that I had never seen Ellie not looking vaguely horny, so that must have just been her resting face. The other 2 women looked tired, and definitely way more beaten up. Vampires, man. They might be subtle sometimes, but they don't fuck around. And then Harpoon stepped out of the entrance to the club, and my heart skipped a beat. I mean, the man looked exactly as he had when I saw him the first time, except that time he had on a suit and tie. The arm on the side with the shoulder that I shot was in a sling, and he looked pretty fucking irritated with life. The cult leader followed after. My girl did not do him justice. I'd met a lot of handsome guys in my day. Hell, I'd dated a few. I'd even been in love with one. But this guy, hot damn, he was just pretty. From his nice masculine jaw and the carefully, purposefully understated stubble, to bright eyes and artfully messy hair. I mean, guy could have been a model. Probably was a model. Even I had a moment where I understood Melissa having some issues ignoring the guy. If it was in another situation and he were another person, I'd have tried to hit that. Like a truck. Like 2 trucks. And a mid-sized sedan. As it was a struggle to even stand there in silence instead of rushing across the street and shooting Harpoon in the damn face, and then grabbing the cult leader and going to town with my fists. But Harpoon was military, I had no doubts. They had magic, and I wasn't sure I'd even make it in a public assault, and even if I did, too many witnesses, too many innocents that could get caught in the crossfire. That was a no-go. The rage was almost too much. It was too real. I could actually almost feel the sensations in my head of my fists pounding the cult leader's face until it was chunks of wet bone and meaty mush. But the obsessive madness in my head told me I had to wait. I watched them turn and stare in confusion at the crowd and then at the half-naked women in torn clothing sitting against the building. Harpoon rolled his eyes. "Women, right?" the cult leader said. I didn't hear it, of course, but I read the bastard's lips as best I could. I'm pretty decent at that, actually. "Yeah, women. Fucking insane," Harpoon muttered, glancing around a moment. "I'm surprised you're leaving so early, sir." Well, what you said made an impression on me. As much as it would be a grand and theatrical entrance to arrive and enter right as the ritual reaches its peak, I think it's better to show solidarity with our people by being present for the bulk, he replied. That one was tough to get all of, so I kind of had to approximate and ad-lib a little, but you get the point. Let's go. Let's go. My beautiful sacrifice awaits. I have the extra sorcerers on guard outside the warehouse, sir. Please, let me check the car before we go, Harpoon said, scanning the area around the entrance of the bar. I melted further back into the shadows, back to the wall. See, I ditched the detective get-up in the back of the SUV and squirmed into black pants, a black shirt, and a black baseball cap, and yes, I did it in the back of the SUV. So, seriously, as big as I am, you have to just take a moment and imagine the fucking yoga I had to do in there. I'd even brushed my hair and come to realize it was nearly at my shoulders. Wasn't sure if I liked that. I'd had weird, silvery gray hair since I was a kid, a result of the same genetic stuff that made my weird back hair, according to my dad. He said my mom was born the same way in terms of hair color, and both of our hair was never really like hair. It's hard to explain. It was more like fur, I guess. You seem paranoid. Do you really think the man you impaled could really survive the poison on your spear? I mean, according to you, it is the most deadly poison you could mix up at a reasonable price. I frowned. Poison. That might explain why I still had a hell of a headache. Or why they were out pre-celebrating. The fuckers had no idea I was still alive. I don't think he could have survived, no. But he was military or ex-military. Or hell, ex-private military. Might have been a spook, even. He had flashbangs like I'd never seen, and a suppressed pistol that looked like it had to be custom. He didn't drive like a civvy, sir. And he shot me in the shoulder while driving, and while trying to evade a harpoon at night. Harpoon answered, looking irritated. I just worry that this guy wasn't alone, that we might have somebody looking for revenge for his death. The cult leader actually laughed. I gritted my teeth and tried not to run across the street and kill him. Oh my God, you're so worried about nothing. Even so, I should check the car. Fine. Do as you wish, the cult leader told him. I watched, I waited, I hoped. Harpoon did a pretty good job of sweeping the vehicle, checking all the usual spots. He even ran his fingers along the inside of the bumper. But he was looking for a bomb of some kind, not something the diameter of a U.S. quarter, and about as thin, like I said. They got in the car, started it up, and drove off. I stepped out of the darkness, walked out of the alley, and walked to my SUV. Ellie met my eyes as I went and flashed me a fanged smile no one could see, because of the veil moratorium. I got in my vehicle, turned on my laptop, and started tracking.